resources that you'll have to access are eye-opening. So today we celebrate a writer who has a rare and wonderful gift. The ability to take history's hidden corners, add a spark of mystery, and turn them into stories you simply cannot put down. Brad Meltzer has spent years inviting readers into worlds where secrets whisper just beneath the surface, and where ordinary people discover extraordinary courage. Meltzer also is a TV host of Decoded and Lost History, a nonfiction writer about heroes in history, and a children's author of a series called Ordinary People Change the World. But today he's going to talk about his newest adult thriller, The Viper. Brad first introduced an unforgettable character named Zig in The Escape Artist. Zig is a quiet, compassionate mortician whose life changes when one unclaimed body reveals a mystery that refuses to stay buried. Even with a story that has twists and turns, the loyal, thoughtful, and unexpectedly brave Zig stood out. So then Zig's journey continued in a second book called The Lightning Rod, where history and suspense collided once again. And I'll quote from The Viper, "The past proves it's never truly finished with us." So with each page, Meltzer deepens both the mystery and the heart at its center. And now the story continues with The Viper, the newest chapter in this gripping path where secrets grow darker, stakes grow higher, and Zig is drawn even further into a world where truth is powerful but very dangerous. So whether you're here for the history, the mystery, or the humanity that lives in every one of his stories, you're in exactly the right place. Please welcome a master storyteller who reminds us that even the quietest among us can change everything, Brad Meltzer.
So nice to be here. And by the way, can we hear it for our amazing librarian? Her last name is a book. That's truly her last name.
I was born to a family of books. Yeah?
Yes.
My mom's name is Baby Book. She took a lot. She did not maybe, thank goodness, read a book.
So when we start by talking about it.
Okay.
So, we want to start with
I can ask you a question.
That sounds good.
So, well, I was expecting a literal snake on the book, but your title is figurative, it's Viper. Tell us about why you named it Viper.
Can I, by the way, tell you how many people wrote to me through my website, Instagram, everything else, and asked me this key question: are there any snakes in the book? Because I can't read any snake books. And I thought when the first one came out, I was like, oh, this is a crazy person who's just... And then it was like a lot of people. And I realized I might have been stupid naming it The Viper because I terrified half the population. Yes, there are no snakes in it for anyone worried. In the Parrot Jungle, you don't have to worry. Miami understands, I appreciate it. And yes, it is really, it's a trick title, of course. And let's just talk about it, just to set it up. It opens up with a man who walks into his local funeral home carrying his favorite blue suit. This is the suit he wants to be buried in. He's got a terminal disease and this is what he wants to be buried in. But here's the thing, if you go to your local bank and you open up a safety deposit box, paperwork gets filed. It means the government can eventually track it. Same thing if you open up a P.O. box, government can track that. But if you secretly sew something into the lining of your suit and you hand that suit to your local mortician, you have the ultimate untraceable hiding spot. So the man goes back to his hotel room. There's a guy with a gun waiting who says, "Where is it?" The man says, "I don't know what you're talking about." The guy with the gun shoots him dead. That suit is still hanging in the funeral home. You won't believe what's hidden inside it or who's about to find it. And I just ruined chapter 1 of the book.
Actually, was that chapter 1 or was it like a preview?
It's a prologue, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it starts out and it grips you. His characters, you already like, oh, that guy's dead. I liked him.
Yeah, I have to make you like him. You do have to fall in love with him to kill him.
Very fast.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is what you learn in these books is if you just kill people, then who cares? Right? And truly, I don't. Like, you know, when you see, it's like, I have a friend who used to work on Law and Order, and it was an amazing superpower. He could tell you by the third commercial who did it. He knew. He knew the setup. He's like, this is the fake one, this is what they want you to think, this is who it is. And I said, that's so amazing. I never want to do that. And no offense to Law and Order, I love Law and Order, but like for me, I turn off if I don't care about the character. So even the most minor character, there's a character in a hotel scene, and I was like, and all he has to do is literally pick up the keys and drop it off with someone. And I sat there for a day figuring out a backstory for him. And it's why the books take me so long, but I hope it's why they come to life, is that you really feel like you met and know all these people.
Is it hard to write a book that stands alone, but is actually the third of a, because there is no back, I did not know the backstory of Zig, although I'm going to go get him.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you're right. Most people, the last time one of these books came out was 4 years ago. So the first person who proofs my books is my wife. And my wife is reading The Viper, and she said, I don't remember what happened in the last book. I'm like, you're my wife! Like, you're my wife, like, I'm married to you, you should, like, and I realized very quickly that no one's going to remember what happened 4 years ago, nor should they. I barely remember what happened 4 years ago on most things, except for my books. And so, of course, if you've never read any of the books before, you can start with The Viper, you will completely understand. And I remember when, I know it's silly, but when I used to read Harry Potter, when the new one would come out, I'd be like, what happened again? And whatever you think of Harry Potter, she does an amazing job of just what I call resetting the table. This is what happened, here's what happened last time, here's what happened, here we go, and let's go again. And that's a vital part, and that's a skill I had to learn when I got to the second book and then now the third book.
It is a skill.
But the blurb on the front of the book says this is the perfect place to meet Zig and Nola, which was the nicest review we got, which meant, okay, I'm doing this right. And the review was not from my wife.
I don't remember if there's any other morticians out there that are part of a series. I mean, is that a niche that you just kind of wandered into? Or did you have a passion about morticians, or did you have a friend?
No, I did not fantasize about morticians.
Did you want to be one?
No, not even that either. I don't know if there's a subgenre. There's a subgenre of everything at this point, but the reality is I do a lot of work with the USO. And the USO they used to bring, when the war was on, they used to bring 6 thriller writers every year to Afghanistan and Iraq. Because the troops loved reading thrillers. And they asked me, I think I was in the second or third group that went over there. And they've taken me to Kuwait and Oman and Qatar, and I've been to Cuba, and I've addressed the Pacific Fleet. I mean, done all this work with the USO. And there was this place that I started hearing about, I never heard of, called Dover. And I didn't know what Dover was. We all know Dover, even if you don't know the name of it. It's where, when that flag-covered coffin comes back and a fallen soldier gets killed in action, the flag-covered coffin comes off the plane and everyone salutes. And what I found out about is it's not just where our fallen soldiers go, but when the astronauts, when the space shuttle went down, all the astronauts' bodies went to Dover. That on 9/11, all the Pentagon victims went to Dover. All our CIA and FBI, all of our agents across the globe, if something goes sideways in their secret mission, their bodies go to Dover's too. Which means Dover's a place that's filled with secrets. And I love secrets. And I love the idea that the government has the world's most secretive funeral home. And I was like, that's the place I want to go. I want to go there. And because of the USO, they allowed me to go in there in unprecedented access. I've worked with them for almost a decade now. And everything you see in the book is real. I don't make it up. So all those details you see about Dover, all the tricks the morticians use to figure out who's this body, how do we bring fingertips back, how do we retouch someone's face, and the morticians there would rebuild someone's jaw, smoothing it over with clay, because a family wanted to see their child one last time. They'd rebuild someone's hand, because a mother said, I want to hold my son's hand one last time. And I was so blown away by the kindness and the generosity of these people who weren't even taking overtime. They just wanted people to have that thing that's impossible to have, this closure. And that's where I found my main character. I found this character, Zig, and Zig believes that if you are a good person and you put good into the world, that's how you make the world a better place. It's a beautiful idea. It's a completely naive idea, but it's an idea worth fighting for. And I was like, I got my main character. This is it, I have it. But I had this idea for another main character, and it came to me because I was, the military was taking me around an Army base. And we're in this big giant warehouse, that's filled with all these crates. It looks like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. And they have all this art, all these paintings. And I'm like, why does the government have all these paintings? It makes no sense to me. And they explained to me this is true, is that since World War I, the government has had an actual painter on staff who paints disasters as they happen. Whether it's storming the beaches of Normandy, whether it's Vietnam, whether it's 9/11. And I said, you're telling me that everyone's racing in with guns blazing, and you've got someone who's racing with nothing but paintbrushes in their pockets. That guy sounds crazy. I want to meet him. I got to meet him. And they said, you mean her. You want to meet her. It was a woman named Amy Brown. And I built my character Nola Brown. I named her after her. And that's where I found my other main character, Nola. And unlike Zig, Nola believes if you want the world to be a better place, you grab it by the throat and you force it to be a better place. Especially if you see someone being picked on, you got to stand up and use your voice and fight back. And that's an ideal worth fighting for. And I think for 3 books now, I just thought, well, that's me. I am Zig. You know, I do believe if you put good into the world becomes a better place. And I am Nola. I do believe if you see injustice, you got to use your voice and stand up and fight. And I just thought, I'm just trying to figure out which part of me is right. And it wasn't until I was working on the Viper that I realized you don't have to choose. We're all Zig. We're all kind people. And we're all Nola. We all have some fight in us. And you don't have to choose between those parts. That you have to just accept all the different parts and love yourself for who you are. And that's what the Viper at the end of the day was, me figuring that out for myself.
Wow.
Free therapy was a book.
I think you're beloved because you mix heroism, legacy, doing the right thing with sentiment, and I mean your storytelling is really fast-paced. It's everything that would be successful in today's world. It translates to movies. With this, have you been contacted?
I mean, I have so many scripts that have been written about my books that no one will ever see. So it's very hard to make a movie, but
You write the scripts?
I haven't written, no, I haven't written. I've written scripts for other shows we've worked on, but not for the books. But to me, it's the books that are my soul, that have my soul in them. And we were talking backstage, and I said when I was working on this book, I found this, you know, the Viper opens up with a quote. It's the last thing I found. The last thing I put in the book is the very first page. It's a quote, and it says, "I don't believe in closure. I'm not sure we ever get over anything." And that quote just hit me in the chest. I was just like, it was like a javelin. I was like, why is this bothering me? And I put it in the front of the book, and when I was working on the Viper, I found this term called pentimento. And I never know what the word meant. I never heard it before. And it's a painting term. And it's a word that talks about in old paintings, when the oil dries up so much, it actually starts becoming see-through, and you can kind of see through onto the canvas the painter's original pencils and lines. And if you go see a Rembrandt in a museum, you can see kind of it's coming through, or Da Vinci, you can see those coming through the paint. It's pentimento. And what you're really seeing is the painter's early draft. It's that rough draft. You see all their mistakes and all their regrets. You see a woman's dress that's facing this way. They've changed their mind. Now it's going to sway this way. And what I realized working on the book is that we're all rough drafts. We're all filled with mistakes and filled with regrets. But all those details, when you accept them, that's just the best parts of who we are. And I love the fact that, you know, closure's completely overrated. It's okay not to have it. But for me, when I'm working on the book, I'm working through something that I don't know what it is, and I realized it was that self-love and self-acceptance. I had a kind of complicated relationship with my dad, and I loved him, and we, you know, even when he passed away, I you know, forgave him, but I don't know if I ever let it go. And it was this book that kind of helped me just accept those regrets, accept those mistakes that we all make. And yes, welcome to my free therapy.
Which came first, the plot or the idea?
Yeah, so the idea, let's talk about the idea. So I was truly in a funeral home. I was with a friend who was like, I always was talking to interesting people. And we're in his funeral home, And he's taking me around, showing me here's where we keep the coffins, and here's where we keep the urns, and all the things you don't even think about that are in a funeral home, that are someone's crazy job. And I see this one door has this giant padlock on it, like a thick lock. And I'm like, well, immediately my brain is like, well, what's in there? And he's like, because I'm like, it's the one thing that can't go, then I want to go there. And he says, oh, you're going to love this. And he pulls out a key, and he undoes the lock, and he swings open the door. And in there are all these suits, and old suits, like from the 90s, like what your grandparents would wear if you went to get married today, right? It's like these pinstripe suits, these sequin gowns. And he explained to me that if you don't have family, people pick out what they want to be buried in. And it's not just suits and dresses. There's like a Jets jersey in there. There's someone's got a cowboy hat, and they left a word that said, when I die, my ex-wife hated this hat. Make sure she sees me buried in it. Like, people are crazy. And they want to just, get their ex-wife one last time. It's unbelievable. And I loved it. And my brain, the way my brain works, immediately went, this is the greatest hiding spot in the world. You can put something in here, and no one will ever find it until you die. What an amazing thing to have. And so I had that. And I didn't know what I was doing with it, and it sat in my head for like 2 years. And that's when I have that idea, I just start building on it. And that's always what comes. And then I kind of let Zig and Nola, I came up with that first chapter I told you about, and then I'd say, how does it affect Zig? How does it affect Nola? What's going to happen now? So they're kind of built almost simultaneously, but I need that plot to kind of hang the characters on.
But while you're writing this, you're writing other things. So how are you keeping this in your mind while you're juggling that?
So for those who don't know, I write children's books, which nothing perfect way to make a change from murdering people than to entertaining your children.
And your newest one is Amelia Earhart.
Yes, when I had kids, I said I want to give my kids better heroes to look up to. I was tired of my kids looking at people who are famous for being famous and thinking that's a hero. Tired of them looking at people who have millions of followers on Instagram and thinking that's a hero. I'm like, that's fame. And being famous is very different than being a hero. And so I gave my daughter, I wanted to give her Amelia Earhart. I'm like, look, I said to my daughter, Amelia Earhart, she's amazing. She flew across the Atlantic Ocean. And my daughter said, big deal, Dad, everyone flies across the Atlantic Ocean. She was not impressed at all. But then I told her this true story that when Amelia Earhart was 7 years old, she built a homemade roller coaster in her backyard. She took a wooden crate, she put roller skating wheels on the bottom, she shoved it to the roof of her tool shed. She put 2 pieces of wood, came flying down the piece of wood, flew through the air, crashed, the whole thing fell apart. She loved it. And she later said that feeling when her stomach bottomed out from under her, she wanted that feeling back again. And that's the first time Amelia Earhart ever flew. She was 7 years old. And my daughter loved that story. And I said, that's what we're going to do, is we're going to write, I wrote, I'm Amelia Earhart, I'm Abraham Lincoln, I am Rosa Parks, we've done I am Jim Henson, and I am Walt Disney. We've done, Jane Goodall helped us with her book, and Billie Jean King spent 2 hours with me on the phone correcting every color shoe she wore in every tennis match in her book. And Dolly Parton helped with hers, and we built this entire series called The Ordinary People Change World Series, the I Am series. And there should be copies here somewhere, but I love the fact that I can do those, and I should just tell you what the newest ones are. The one that just came out 3 weeks ago is I wanted to do a book on empathy. I felt like our kids, and all of us, are starving for empathy right now. We're starving for empathy and kindness. And so we did I Am Princess Diana, a hero to encourage empathy. And then we do, in 2 months, we do I Am Teddy Roosevelt is coming. And then the 40th book in the series is We Are the Wright Brothers, which will come out in October. So I love the fact we get to do that next. And then, yes, I do also history books, because for those who know me from the History Channel, we did a book called The First Conspiracy, about a secret plot to kill George Washington that really happened. We did the Lincoln Conspiracy, about a plot to kill Abraham Lincoln. The Nazi Conspiracy is about a plot to kill FDR, Stalin, and Churchill at the height of World War II. And we just came out with last year the JFK Conspiracy, about a secret plot to kill JFK 3 years before Lee Harvey Oswald. And it took place actually in Palm Beach. It was here in Florida, because everything crazy is in Florida. Like every crazy thing I find in history, like this is in Florida. I'm like, I know, I live here, I understand. And JFK is coming out on a Sunday morning to go to church, and he doesn't know that there's a disgruntled postal worker right across the street with 7 sticks of dynamite in his car. And all this postal worker has to do when JFK comes out is hit the gas, push the little trigger mechanism he's built, and boom, will go the dynamite. And JFK walks outside. I won't ruin the ending, that's chapter 1 of the book. But what saves his life has to do with Jackie. And if you're a Jackie fan, you're going to love the JFK conspiracy. But I love the fact that I get to do those books and then do a kid's book and then come back to the Viper and I get recharged. And now when I come back to that thriller, I missed it. And so that's where I think if I did just thrillers straight through, I would start to hate it. And I would never want to hate something I love so much.
So where did you come across a story like that? Were you at a museum? Were you at a cocktail?
Yeah, so I'm so nerdy, I love the footnotes. Like, you know those things everyone skips and goes past? I pore over them. And I remember reading in the footnote of a George Washington book I was reading, it was a paragraph, nothing, that said that there was a plot to kill George Washington at the start of the Revolutionary War. When George Washington found out about it, he took the person responsible, built a gallows, and hanged him in front of 20,000 people. The largest public execution at that point in North American history. George Washington brought the hammer down, was like, do not mess with me, I'm George Washington, I'm going to be on the money one day. That's a direct quote from George Washington. By the way, in Alabama, no one thinks that's a joke. They're wrong. And I went to this Pulitzer Prize winning historian. I was like, is this true? Is this internet nonsense? I don't even, what's the story here? And he said to me, it's true. It's in every good book about Washington and the Revolutionary War. It's in every single book is a story, but it's only a paragraph. And he said, if you love it, research the book. You'll go on an adventure. And if it's real, then you go on an even better adventure. And I love an adventure, so I started doing that. And I just find them there. I found the JFK book and just, again, a little mention of it, and I was like, why is this story, why does no one know it? And then I started digging in.
Did you major in history in college?
I did major in history, and I loved history here. And in fact, this is how much I loved history. I never get to tell this story, but it's a crazy story. Is my history teacher from high school here in Florida. I went to North Miami Beach Senior High School. And all those years ago, I had this great history teacher named Mrs. Sherman. And I dedicated one of my books to her to say thank you for showing me my love of history. And she writes to me and says, I really appreciate you writing that. We go back and forth. I hadn't seen her in a decade. And then she writes me another email and says, can I ask you a question? I'm like, uh-oh, something's coming. And she says, I'm actually dying. I'm in kidney failure. And I see you have all these people on your Facebook and Instagram page. Can you help me find a kidney by putting out word that I need a match? So I'm like, sure, that's easy, I can do that. So I say, if you donate a kidney and are a match for my teacher, I'll make you a character in my next book. And all these people volunteer to be tested. And one of them is actually a match. And so when you read The Viper, there's a character named Wags, Amy Wags. It's a great name. She also is in it because she saved my teacher's life. And we got to save her with the Don't clap for me, she's the one who gave the kidney. I didn't do anything.
You're the joke? Wow. And I'm just gonna, my question's gonna be, any surprises arise while you're writing it? Were there any other surprises?
There's always surprises. Like when you do these books, that child just read The Viper and is really. So I'll give you. This is a story again. I can't usually tell it. They didn't even allow me to tell this story, but I can tell it here. So because I want to make this kid cry even more. So when I was writing the first conspiracy. I got letters and blurbs on that book from President Clinton and President Bush. They both wrote me really nice blurbs on the book. And they invited me to the White House, and it was like this amazing thing. And this is what no one knew, was when President Bush Sr. was dying, they were bringing in his favorite writers to read to him on basically what was going to be his deathbed. And I got the call. And my wife and I are in Kennebunkport, Maine. and they bring us in. The Secret Service say to me, listen, he's going to fall asleep. He's sleeping most of the day now. So you're going to read for about 5 or 10 minutes, and that's going to be the way you'll get out of here. I said, no problem, I'm happy to be here. And the Secret Service leave, and it's just myself, my wife, President Bush, and his service dog, Sully. And I can see what shape he's in. He has a stack of books on his desk, and one of the books is a copy of my book, The First Conspiracy. And as I'm going through this, sure enough, he falls asleep. And I say, sir, you want to read from this? And he says, because at that point, I should say he can't speak anymore. He can only say, or And I start reading, and he falls asleep. And the chapter I brought to read to him is the moment where George Washington has the Declaration of Independence read to his troops for the very first time. And President Bush is sleeping, and I get to those words we all know. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. And as I say the words, President Bush's eyes pop open, and he's locked on me. And I get to the end of the chapter, and he's wide awake still, and I say, sir, you want to read another chapter? And he says, And I get to the end of that chapter, I say, you want to read another chapter, sir? And another, And instead of being there for 5 or 10 minutes, I'm there for an hour. And at the end of the hour, I'm sorry. At the end of the hour, do you want to bring him up here, sir? Because we can hear you. We all can hear you. Sorry. And so, well, put him on my lap. He'll really cry. I promise. And so, at the end of the hour, I say to him, I say goodbye to him. I know I'm never going to see him again. I know it. I know I'm never going to see him again. I can see what shape he's in. But to be able to read about the very first president of the United States, at that point, the oldest living president of the United States, is one of the most humbling moments of my life. It was like the shock that we was able to do that.
Wow, that is one of the best reasons to be an author and to have put everything creative into the world so that you get that kind of response back.
Yeah, and obviously, again, that is not how my life works. Right? That is not what I do on a regular basis.
Actually, it is.
I know, but it is one of those amazing things where you're just like, what? Like my wife said to me, at what point did your life become Forrest Gump? Like, it was just like because we knew, yes, it was crazy. You can't plan for it, so that was the surprise for this one.
That's a beautiful story. I think you're able to stay positive in a pretty negative world. And so that's really inspirational.
I can't stay positive. What I have to do is I have to fight for that. We have to fight for that. I was lucky enough last year, I gave the commencement address at my son's college at the University of Michigan. And there were 70,000 people in the stadium, which is why I'm a little disappointed with today's turnout. And so there were 70,000 people there, but I was focused on one. My son was graduating that day. And what I talked about was magic. Because as a writer, that's my job, is to make things appear out of thin air. And if you talk to magicians, they'll tell you there are only 4 types of magic tricks. If you put aside illusions and escapes, there's only 4 types of tricks. 1, you make something appear. 2, you make something disappear. 3, you make 2 things switch places. And the 4th is you take one thing and you turn it into something else, the hardest trick of all, transformation. And I start talking about all the tricks you have to do, what you have to make appear in your life, what you have to make disappear from your life. And when I get to the 3rd trick, I say, here, let's talk about empathy. Because that's what empathy is, switching places with someone else and putting yourself in their shoes. And I told this story, and this is true. I used to work at the Aventura Mall. During high school, I scooped ice cream for 4 years. And I learned a lot of empathy and humility there. But one of the things, when we first got to Florida, right before I got the job, is we moved down here, and my family had no money, which is why I was working there. And we had to live with my grandparents. We had to move in with my grandparents when we first got to South Florida. And it was 6 of us. My mom, my dad, my sister, myself, and 2 grandparents lived in a 1-bedroom apartment.
Wow.
And it was too many people in one place, and everyone in the condo was trying to get us evicted because they were like, there's too many of you. And I don't blame them. They were right. There were too many of us there. But I was terrified as a kid because every day I was worried we were going to be evicted. And this one woman who lived across the hall saw what was happening to us. And she said to my grandmother, you know what? I want you to take my apartment. I'm going to go away for a couple weeks. Take my apartment so your family can have some space and won't get evicted. Nicest thing to this day that anyone's ever done for my family. And as a kid, I remember her name was Mercy. But as a kid, I always heard it as mercy. And make no mistake, mercy and empathy is what she showed us. Today, cruelty and venom and harshly judging those we disagree with has become sport in our culture. But cruelty and venom aren't signs of strength. They're signs of weakness and petty insecurity. And what takes strength is being kind to someone else and showing them some kindness and showing them some empathy. And when I talked about that story in the speech, all these people started clapping. 70,000 people started reacting. And I was like, what? Why is everyone reacting there? And when the speech was over, all these people started sharing this part of the commencement address. And it went all over. All these famous people started. Katie Couric shared it, and Maria Shriver. I don't know any of these people, but they all started sharing it all around the country. And eventually we made a book out of it called Make Magic that came out a couple months ago. And we call it The Little Book of Inspiration that you didn't know you needed. And I say that all to answer your question, which is, it doesn't come naturally to me. I'm not some like wound, happy guy. But I think we have to fight for that, and we have to teach our kids and our grandkids how vital it is to be empathetic to each other, right? I mean, one day someone's going to hug you so tight that all your broken pieces will fit back together. And I know that every person here today has someone who they wish could be here today. I wish my parents could see my kids today to see that they're okay. Everyone you meet is battling something you can't see. So as you leave here, show some empathy. I see those of you who are crying. I see you. I got you. Right? I wish my mom were here today. My dad used to go into the Aventura Barnes & Noble when it was around, and he'd go in every day and he'd say, I'm here for Brad Meltzer's new book. He's my favorite author. And they're like, Mr. Meltzer, we know he's your son. We know he's your son. Right? And I love the fact that I get to fight for that empathy now, and I think it's important. So that's not a natural thing. That's a mission.
You know, most people look to somebody else to be the hero, and it's interesting because you just have to be the hero. You have to do it. You just have to, okay, that needs to be done. Don't even ask. Just start doing it. I went into a situation where I just started bagging food for the homeless, and I saw somebody doing it. I started doing it, and somebody complimented me, saying, you know, you just sort of took over and then started training others. You can't nowadays expect somebody else to be there. It has to be you if you see it needing to be done.
Oh, I will tell you this. So years ago, I'm in an airport bathroom, very, very fancy place. And there's a guy who's next to me, and I'm washing my hands, and this guy next to me is washing his hands, but he's got like 3 seconds ahead of me. And so as he walks out, I'm 3 seconds behind him. And as we walk out, he passes the janitor who's cleaning up the bathroom. And he looks at the janitor and he says, thanks for keeping it clean. Just struck by that moment. And I started saying that. Every time I go into any public restroom, whether it's in a restaurant, whether it's in the airport, wherever it is, I see the janitor, I say, thanks for keeping it clean. But here's what I love is my son starts saying it now because he heard me say it. And what I love about that is I don't know who that guy was who first said it. He has no idea who I am, but for over 10 years now, I've been saying thank you for keeping it clean. And I love the fact that when you put something good in the universe, it just winds up affecting X amount of other people in ways you're never, ever going to see or realize or experience. And that is to me the beauty of the world. And I love the fact, like you said, you bag that thing, and there's that person does it, and that person does it. I know we can sit around, especially these days, and talk about how the world is on fire, because the world is on fire. Make no mistake, we are not in a good place as a country. I don't care what your politics are. Half the country hates the other half of the country. We are just not in a good spot right now. And the only way out is to find better people and better people to look up to and show your kids and grandkids who actually know what empathy is and know what kindness is. And if you're following someone who's not doing that, you're following the wrong person. Your priority is stuff like that. I see you.
Well, I've been monopolizing him, so I want to share. Does anyone have a question from the audience? Has anyone read the book already?
Oh, we got her.
Raise your hand. Raise your hand. You read the book.
I appreciate that. This is a woman who couldn't hear her. She was at the graduation I spoke at. I totally recognize you. And I appreciate that she was inspired. Yeah, I'll sign a copy of Make Magic for her. We got to do that. I appreciate it. Other questions? Yes?
So I recently read The Magician, and now we're here at the Viper. I haven't read the middle book yet. Do you have, like, when you're writing that, you finish, and I have to get to this part of the story. How do I, like, do you have an end and then you have to fill it in? And, like, is there more after you wrote this? Now that you think, wait, I need to, like, when does the story end? It doesn't end. You said it doesn't end. It keeps going, but...
Yeah, but let's talk about the questions about the process. Like, you know the ending when you start. How do you figure it out? And I do, so when I start, I had that beginning just for the Viper, right? I have that thing. I know that suit is going to have something hidden in it. The one thing I need to know is I need to know the ending. I need to know what's hidden in the suit. I need to know, like, who done it. Like, if you're writing whodunits, you got to know who to leave out of the room when the done it is happening, right? Like, that's how it works for me. What I don't know is all the twists and turns. And I did a book, my second book I ever wrote, I outlined the entire book. I didn't start until I had every chapter, every twist, every turn, everything. And I liked the book, it was fine. But to me, it was the worst process I ever had, because it was like doing connect the dots. There was nothing new. I just was going 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and for 2 years I'm sitting there just following the path. And I don't like the path. I like the place where no one went. And what I realized I like more is I like starting. I know what the ending is, but I love the fact that 3 months in, I'm like, wait a minute. You know, I'm taking a walk, or I'm in the shower, and I'm like, no. He's sleeping with her, they're cheating on their spouses, they're working together, and then there's a better twist, and then it's an evolving process, and that's what I like. And so I knew at the end of this book where I was going to leave the characters, and I knew when I wrote the lightning rod and when I wrote the escape artist, I wanted to stick with them, and I didn't have there's no super grand plan. I know the kind of big grand plan, but for me, it's as long as I love these characters, I will write them. There's one of the most famous authors in the world said to me about his super famous character, if I have to write this character again, I want to put a gun in my mouth. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're so much more successful than I will ever be, but I don't want your life. You hate what you love, like what you used to love. And so as long as I love Zig and Nola and I feel like I have something to say about them, I will write them, and if not, I will move them aside. But to me, the fun is figuring out and doing the puzzle and building the boat as you're sailing the boat. Then it gives us spontaneity to it. Yes? You have to say it louder. Yeah, the question is, how do you get over writer's block? Said the writer and her question, right? And you know, this is to me, writer's block is a term that becomes very scary because once we put a label on it. And I don't, to me, I think the phone only rings when you get in the shower, right? That's the cliche. And you gotta get in the shower if you want the phone to ring. So for me, I walk around my block. Like when I'm stuck, I call a friend and I just take myself away from the book. And I'm like, because if I sit there and go, think of something funny. Like if I said to you right now, tell me a joke, make it funny. You're like, I don't know, I got it. But the moment you leave here, the joke enters your head. You're like, I wish I said this, right? You get in an argument with someone and then 3 hours later when you're sitting in bed, you're like, I wish I got the best line, the best comeback. We have these arguments in our heads. Like, so all you got to do is stop thinking about it and then you'll come up with it. But you put the pressure on yourself and you're going to get stuck. Like, be okay with knowing that we all go through it. It's hard every day. I've been doing this for Next year will be 30 years since my first book came out. It is hard for me every day. And I know what I'm doing. I feel like I know how to do it, but it's hard every single day. And I remember years ago, this best-selling author, when I told him how my second book came out, was coming out, and it was so hard for me to write. I felt really bad complaining. Because they don't ever want to complain about something that is such a crazy fun job. I felt like it was being spoiled. Like I'm the first in my immediate family to go to a 4-year college. How do I complain that I have a job talking to imaginary people? Right? Like, only the biggest jerk would complain about that. And I remember he said to me, Brad, if it was easy, everyone would do it. And I was like, oh, it's okay to admit it's hard. It's hard, right? And so give yourself the grace to know that if it was easy, everyone would do it, and just keep going. The one thing you got to do is you got to sit in the seat and write every day. That's it. I don't write on the weekends, but every day I sit down and I try and have something. It's like building a sandcastle, a grain of sand at a time. The first day you got nothing, and day 2 you got 2 grains of sand, and day 3 you got 3. But eventually, at the end of the year, you're going to have a little pile, and that's where you can do. Because, as I say, you can't fix. You can always fix bad writing. You can't fix no writing. So you just got to write something.
You also have to be bored, or you have to take yourself away from being distracted, because if you're constantly on your social media or cruising the news, you're never going to be able to put things together that other people don't see.
Yeah, and for me, some people know exactly where they're going. I figured out as I go, including the big theme. I remember when I buried my mom, my mom was in hospice, truly on her deathbed. And the publisher said the proof was ready for my book. It was the final proof where you just literally read the typos. And they said, we don't want to send it to you now, we know what you're going through. No, I need a distraction, send it to me, I'm just sitting here useless. Like, it'll give me like a feeling like I can do something. I'm reading the book, my mom is in the next room, dying. And I'm reading through the book and going, oh, this whole book is about a character who lost their mother. I didn't even realize it. I knew they had a dead mom, but it takes me 2 years. I was like, this is the book as my mom was dying slowly over time. This is what I was struggling with. And I wasn't figuring that out until I was proofing the final draft. And so to me, the best writing is when you're letting yourself deal with those issues that you don't even know, then you're being honest, and emotionally honest in a way that you probably wouldn't be if you knew everyone was watching. Other questions? Yes?
If you want to divulge it, who are the writers that inspire you?
Who are the writers who inspire me?
Who do you read?
Yeah, who I read? You know, my favorite author is this guy, Brad Meltzer. Sometimes just watches TV shows. Just with a mirror and oh, Brad, you've done it again. No, I mean, my favorite author is, I love Alan Moore, who wrote Watchmen. That's my favorite book of all time. It's a graphic novel, Watchmen by Alan Moore. I love comic books and graphic novels. I consume them like crazy, but I read everything. I read everyone from John Green. I'm reading Barbara Kingsolver right now. I'm just trying to think what's on my side that I just finished. All Fours. I love everything. I read a lot of history, and I read a lot of fiction. I read a lot of young adult, and I read a lot of comics. I don't read any one genre. If it's a good book, give it to me. And it's how I'm a reader, and it's probably why I'm a writer like that. I write in every genre, and I read in every genre. And to me, a good story is a good story. So, I mean, I read Barbara Kingsolver's
Poisonwood?
Poisonwood is what I'm in now because I never read it. Demon Copperhead is the last great book that blew me away. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow blew me away. That was my favorite book of the last 2 years ago, I guess. Like those books that blow me away, they're the same ones that blow you away. They just knock me out of my socks and go like, and the next day I can't write because I'm like, I can't do that. But you go and do that. That's the book. That's the fun of it. I'm sorry.
You and then you.
Thank you, Brad, for everything you do. You're amazing. My kids love your book, and I've been a long-time fan. I'm an aspiring author. I'm sure there are a few of us here. So writing is the relatively easy part, as hard as it is. The harder part is getting it published and getting it sold. So what advice do you have for those folks who are not only want to write a book, but want to be successful at it? You clearly figured it out. So what's some unique advice that you might have?
Yeah, so here's the best advice I got when it comes to actually publishing. I appreciate that question. is a friend of mine was an agent. We all, you know, if you write your book, you have to get an agent. That's what you have to do. And to get an agent, you got to write a cover letter that gets your book noticed by the agent. And a friend of mine told me that, I forget if I'm going to mess up the number, he thinks it's 100 submissions a week or 100 submissions a month. And that means 100 books a week or a month. Whatever it is, it's a crazy amount of books to go through. And the letters that you're writing, everyone wants to write like, hey, this is my book, and then I did this, and then I moved to Florida, and then I wrote this, and chapter 3, this happened. And he's like, I can't read even the cover letters. There's so many of them. And he said to me, this is the best cover letter that I ever got. It said, Dear Sir, Madam, in January of 2027, the world's first female solo space shuttle flight is launched into the atmosphere. In January of 2028, the world's first solo female space shuttle flight comes back to the planet Earth. The astronaut is 6 months pregnant. Would you like to read my manuscript? And I was like, that's a winner. And what he explained to me was, to answer your question, write that letter like you're writing the back of your paperback, the copy on there. If you look at the back of my paperbacks, there's like 3 or 4 sentences. That's what I got to look at. You're in Miami Airport, you pull it off, I got 3 sentences, 4 sentences to grab you by the throat. And if not, you're going to put it back and grab another. And that's what you got to do, is like write it like that. I will tell you, years ago, when I was calling up all these agents, I tried to start calling them, and I was like bothered. I'm like, everyone loves my book, and they're all calling me, they all want to represent me. No one was calling me, right? Like I was totally lying. And this one agent in Boston said, I want to represent you. I said, fantastic, what do I do now? And she said, well, if you want to be the nice guy, you should call the other agents and tell them, please don't read my manuscript, so that way they don't waste their time. And I hope my mother raised me to be a nice person. So I called the other agents in New York, and I'm like, listen, I found this agent in Boston. Please don't read my manuscript. And this one agent in New York said to me, Brad, you want to know how books get sold? I'm going to tell you how books get sold. She goes, I'm sitting at a cocktail party, and I'm having a good time, and I see this editor, and I think he's good looking, so I take him home with me, and we sleep together. And I wake up naked next to him the next morning, and he says, so, what do you got? And that's how books get sold. And I'm like, can you send my manuscript back, please? And I knew in that moment that this crazy person, this is the industry I wanted to be in. I wanted to be surrounded by lunatics like this. But the truth was, the secret was writing that good cover letter. That is the key to it. And if you submit that to 10 people and no one asks for your book, you have a bad cover letter. So don't submit to 25 people, submit to like 8 or 10. And if they all start saying, hey, I want to see the manuscript, then you know you have a good letter. But write that letter first. It's as important as anything else.
A plug for Miami-Dade Public Library's programs. Rochelle Weinstein, who's here today.
Oh, she's terrific.
She explains the cover letter and even gave an example at one of our local author book fair that happens every January. And I actually took a picture of what she was giving as an example. Excellent course. If you ever see Rochelle Weinstein at the Miami-Dade Public, come and take her lecture. Audiobooks. Do you read your own books?
There was someone else.
Great.
You.
You.
Not really a question, but I'm also a graduate of NBC Senior High, Bill Charters. And I just want to say thank you. Continue with my Miami Book Fair before numerous times. I just appreciate how much support local events.
I appreciate you. I appreciate our high school too, Bill Chargers.
I
I'm going to tell you, I do have to say, my kids said to me, like, how do you sell your first book? And the crazy part is you've seen people ask questions. You've seen someone from Michigan here who supported me. You see someone from NMB come and support me. And I tell my kids all the time, and it's the only reason I wish I dragged them here today. Because they're like, we don't want to go to your events anymore, Dad. We've seen them too many times. But it is truly because local people here in Florida supported me from the start. The only reason I sit here today is that. And the only thing, if you take one thing away from this talk today, is thank you. Thank you for doing that. It is not lost on me that when you have your first signing, you know everyone in the audience because no one's coming unless they know you. It's all my relatives and my family friends. But eventually you start seeing people you don't know. And my dad, before he passed away, I said, I can trace every person at my events to someone I know. He says, you can. Thank you for proving I can. I can. But I do appreciate your kindness. Yes?
When you're faced with a choice, like a plot, beat, character decision, how do you kind of go between two good options? Is it more
Yeah, the question is when you have two choices, right? And you have to choose between them, right? A novel is a billion choices, everything. When you do a history book, you just follow what Abraham Lincoln did. What do you do next? You do that. What do you do next? But a novel is infinite choices. And how do you choose between them? Is there a mathematical way? And I wish there was a science to it. For me, there are some things that I just know in my gut, right? Like they'll say something like, if I want to make it's something funny and then the word is watermelon or they're holding a rutabaga. Rutabaga is just a funnier word. I can't tell you why it is, but it is. You can argue with me all day long, but I know in my gut you'll never convince me that watermelon is the funnier word. And that I just know. And there are things I know. And I would say, most of the things you just know. What you're asking about is a harder question, which is when it's close, right? Is the woman, is she dressed like a hippie, or is she dressed like a punk and she's got tattoos? I'm like, what kind of character would this person be? And when I get to those hard ones, I need someone I trust. It's my wife. I will always call my wife, 2 or 3 times a day, stuck on that moment going, is it this or is it that? And she's like, I don't believe that. It's that. I'm like, thank you. And I just need someone who and again, there's no right answer there, right? It's a gut choice. But to me, I don't know, when you hear it, you know it. And sometimes I have a friend who, when I used to ask him, he would tell me what he thought, and I'd be like, it's the opposite. And I knew that if I called him, whatever he said, just pick the other way. So you just gotta know your audience. I trust my taste at the end of the day, you have to, yeah. But I do trust my wife. I will tell you though, that she winds up taking at least 25% of the jokes out of the book. She's like, you're not that funny. And I'm like, I am so funny. And she's like, you're not that funny. So she doesn't know that I actually put in 50% more jokes into every book. So when she takes them out, I still get.
Do you have a say about the audiobook narrator? Are you a narrator?
So I read Make Magic. I didn't read that one because it was the commencement address brought to life. And I did do a couple kids' books. It's an art form. Reading your audiobook is an art form. And the very first book they sent me, it was back in 1997. It was a cassette back then, just to date myself. And my name was on a cassette. And that was cool to me because it wasn't a mixtape. My name was on it. And I popped it into the little boom box and I listened and it just sounded nothing like me. And I was like, this is bad. It's bad. And I never even got through 5 minutes of it. And the second book, they hired a female woman who was really well known at the time. And I put that one in. And also, it didn't sound right. The third book, there was this young guy who was just starting out. I was still starting out, named Scott Brick. And I put in now it was a CD. And I remember it was in my car, and I put the CD in my car, and I was like, who's this guy? This guy sounds like how I wish it is in my head. He knows where to pause. He knows where to go slow to increase your tension. He knows how to tell a joke. He's funny. And I gave it to my grandmother. May she rest in peace. She was basically blind and going deaf at the time. So she could only do this new thing called audiobooks. And this was right at the beginning of them. And I gave it to her and she says, Bradley, he sounds so handsome. And I was like, we're going with this guy. And since then, Scott Brick has not only re-recorded my first 2 books, he's done everything I've ever done since, and I get to say it, and they always ask me.
Last chance?
And by the way, super handsome.
Last chance to ask a question? Okay. Then I'm going to wrap it up by thanking the Friends of the Miami-Dade Public Library for holding this event.
Yeah. I just want to thank everyone who put this together. I see the volunteers who are out there. Thank you to everyone. Thanks to our amazing librarian, Ellen Gold. And again, the most important thing I will say is thank you. Thank you for being here today. It is a beautiful day out, and you are at a book fest. You are the nerdiest people on the planet, and you are my kind of people, and I love you for it. And thank you for coming to Miami Book Fair and all those other places. And the return guests, obviously, we're happy to sign everything they have me sign. And
Books and Books are selling these,
Yep.
and you can follow the volunteers. They'll take you over to the tent where you'll meet one-on-one with Brad Meltzer.
Thanks so much.